Welcome back to Cheating Stories Hub. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate each one of you. Before we dive into today's compelling story, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. Now, let's get into this tale of betrayal, cunning strategy, and ultimate triumph. Ethan Carter stood motionless in his luxury penthouse apartment, his storm-gray eyes fixed on the meticulously set anniversary dinner table. 25 years of marriage were symbolized by fine china, crystal glasses, and a bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux, Samantha's favorite, sitting unopened, a silent testament to his unwavering attention to detail. At exactly 7 p.m., the elevator doors slid open. Samantha's designer heels echoed against the marble floor, each click deliberate and cold. She entered, adorned in a dazzling new dress that still bore its price tag, a detail Ethan's sharp eye didn't miss. "Really, Ethan?" Samantha's voice dripped with disdain as she surveyed the romantic setup. "You thought we'd have a cozy little dinner?" Ethan's calm expression didn't waver as he studied her face, the same face he had cherished for over 2 decades. It now bore nothing but scorn. "I thought we could talk," he replied evenly. "Resolve things civilly." Samantha's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking. She reached into her expensive handbag and flung a thick envelope onto the table, scattering the carefully arranged rose petals. "There's nothing to discuss," she said, her tone dripping with venom. "Happy anniversary, darling." Ethan opened the envelope with steady hands. Inside were divorce papers, meticulously prepared and awaiting his signature. He scanned the document, his expression remaining unreadable. "You didn't seriously think I'd stay married to a modest investment advisor forever, did you?" Samantha smirked, sauntering to the bar and pouring herself a glass of champagne. "Oh, Ethan, you are just so small." Her words struck with calculated cruelty. "So, who's the upgrade?" Ethan asked, still calm, as he closed the envelope. "Victor Greer," she said with satisfaction, swirling her glass. "CEO of Greer Enterprises. Now that's a man who knows how to treat a woman of my caliber." She reveled in the revelation, savoring every word. "He's helped me make some very smart financial moves, too." Check page 6. Ethan turned the pages of the document, his sharp eyes catching the details. Joint accounts, completely emptied. Transferred, as Samantha noted, with precision and legality. She laughed again, her cruelty unwavering. "Victor's lawyers are brilliant," she gloated. "Every penny is accounted for. Oh, and while you were buried in your spreadsheets, he and I were, well, let's just say, enjoying your bed. Quite often, actually." Ethan's face remained impassive, his silence irritating Samantha. No angry outburst? No pathetic pleading? "My God, you're dull." She grabbed her coat and purse. "Victor is waiting for me. Enjoy your spreadsheets, Ethan." As the elevator doors closed behind her, Samantha missed the faint smile that flickered across Ethan's lips, a smile that would have frozen her had she seen it. It wasn't defeat but something darker. Calculating. Ethan walked to his study, opened his laptop, and clicked on a folder labeled Contingency. Inside were photographs, financial records, and legal documents, all meticulously catalogued. His suspicions about Samantha and Victor had been confirmed months ago, and he had been preparing ever since. A text from his confidant, Mark, flashed on his phone. "Everything in place?" Ethan replied, proceeding as planned. Returning to the dining room, Ethan retrieved the divorce papers. He straightened the pages and placed them in his briefcase. His mind flashed to the moment years ago when his career in investments had taken off. He had seen patterns others missed, moved assets strategically, and built a fortune through precision. Samantha had underestimated him. She had mistaken his silence for weakness, his patience for passivity. But Ethan knew this game better than anyone. As he looked at his reflection in the window, he didn't see a defeated man. He saw a predator, biding his time. Still waters run deep, and dangerous. Mark Riley, Ethan Carter's trusted confidant, stood in Ethan's private office, observing as his employer meticulously arranged documents on his mahogany desk. The room was an extension of Ethan himself, organized, calculated, and purposeful. Every item had a place, and every document carried significance. "They cleaned out the accounts?" Mark asked, his voice tense with restrained anger. "Most of them," Ethan replied evenly, not looking up from the documents. "The one Samantha knew about?" Mark narrowed his eyes. "The ones she knew about? You're telling me you had others?" Ethan finally looked up, a predatory gleam in his storm-gray eyes. "You've known me for over 20 years, Mark. Do you really think I'd keep all my assets accessible to her? She knows the surface. I control the depths. How long have you known about the affair?" Mark asked, still processing the calm precision with which Ethan was dismantling Samantha and Victor's betrayal. 7 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days, Ethan replied without hesitation, pulling up a series of documents on his computer. "The exact length of time since I launched Operation Shadow." Mark leaned in, scanning the screen. Ownership records, shell corporations, proxy shareholders, it was a web of financial maneuvers that pointed to one undeniable truth. "Jesus Christ, Ethan," Mark muttered. "You own Greer Enterprises? 51%? Controlling interest?" Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Acquired systematically through various shell corporations over the last 2 years. Victor's arrogance made it easy, he never bothered to scrutinize his institutional investors. But the logistics, the cost. How did you pull this off?" "Years of favors, carefully cultivated contacts, and resources set aside for contingencies like this," Ethan said, his tone matter-of-fact. "While Victor was seducing my wife, I was buying his company out from under him. Piece by piece." Mark sank into the chair across from Ethan's desk, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of Ethan's machinations. "Does anyone else know?" "Only my lawyers. And they are well compensated for their discretion." Ethan walked to the window, staring at the city skyline. "Victor thinks he's taken everything from me. He doesn't realize he's been dancing to my tune for months." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Ethan's assistant entered. "Sir, Detective Hannah Diaz is here for her appointment." "Perfect timing," Ethan murmured, straightening his tie. "Send her in." Detective Hannah Diaz entered with a commanding stride. Her sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." Ethan gestured to a chair. "Please, Detective. What can I do for you?" Mark remained seated, observing as Diaz pulled out a notebook. "I'm investigating allegations of financial misconduct at Greer Enterprises," she began. "Given your personal connection to Victor Greer, I hoped you might have some insight." Ethan's expression shifted, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his otherwise composed demeanor. "My personal connection?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "Your wife's affair with Mr. Greer," Diaz clarified. "Ex-wife," Ethan corrected, his voice tinged with pain. "As of today. She served me divorce papers on our anniversary, of all days." Detective Diaz's gaze softened slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that. Must have been difficult." "It was," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair, the perfect image of a man struggling with personal tragedy. "I've been so consumed with trying to salvage my marriage that I haven't paid much attention to Victor's business dealings. I wish I could be more helpful." Mark watched the performance with admiration. Every word, every gesture was calculated to present Ethan as a broken man, too preoccupied with personal pain to be involved in any corporate intrigue. "We've received reports of irregular financial activities," Diaz pressed on. Large sums moving through unusual channels. Does that sound familiar? Ethan sighed heavily. I wouldn't know. Samantha cleared out our joint accounts, but I assume that's not what you're investigating. No, this goes deeper, Diaz said, her tone serious. There are signs of systemic fraud within the company structure. How unfortunate, Ethan murmured, his expression somber. Though I suppose a man capable of destroying a marriage wouldn't hesitate to bend other rules. Detective Diaz studied him closely, but Ethan's mask of sincerity held. If you think of anything that might help, please contact me, she said, handing him her card. After Diaz left, Mark turned to Ethan. She suspects something. Of course, she does, Ethan replied. She's good at her job. And you're using her, Mark said, almost in awe. I'm guiding her, Ethan corrected, picking up the detective's card. She'll uncover everything she needs to know, at exactly the right time. Mark shook his head. You've thought of everything. When you hunt a predator, Mark, you have to think like one. Ethan opened another folder. Victor is about to make a critical mistake. We need to be ready. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that evening, in Victor Greer's opulent office, the man himself stood admiring his reflection in the glass. His tailored suit exuded power and success, while Samantha lounged on the leather sofa, scrolling through luxury real estate listings. The Greystone Manor is available, Samantha said. 12 bedrooms, indoor pool, private theater. Perfect for entertaining. Victor smiled indulgently. Think big, darling. Why not? A knock interrupted their conversation. Bernard Walsh, Victor's CFO, entered with a grim expression. We have a problem, he said. Victor's smile vanished. What kind of problem? Our major institutional investors are asking questions, Walsh explained. Very specific questions about our revenue streams and subsidiary operations. Handle it, Victor snapped. That's your job. With all due respect, sir, Walsh said, hesitating. These inquiries are unusual. Someone has been feeding them detailed information. Victor's face darkened. Information? What kind of information? Walsh handed him a folder. Financial records that suggest irregularities. Victor flipped through the pages, his expression growing thunderous. This is impossible. These records are sealed. No one has access to this information. Apparently, someone does, Walsh replied quietly. Victor's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, then swore under his breath. They want to see the Q3 projections. Now. You'd better get ahead of this, Walsh warned before leaving the office. Samantha looked worried. What does this mean? It means we move faster, Victor said, reaching for his phone. We're pushing the IPO ahead of schedule. Is that a good idea? Samantha asked. With these questions hanging over us? It's the perfect idea, Victor insisted. Once we go public, these accusations will be old news. We'll have fresh capital, new investors. This will all blow over. Neither Victor nor Samantha noticed the small red light blinking on his desk phone, transmitting their conversation to a secure server. Back in his office, Ethan watched the feed with satisfaction. Their arrogance blinds them, he said to Mark, who stood nearby. Victor is rushing the IPO, just as we predicted. And Samantha? Mark asked. She thinks she's won, Ethan replied, his smile cold. Let them celebrate. The storm is about to break, and they don't even see it coming. The pieces were in place. The trap was set. All that remained was to watch his enemies walk into it. Victor Greer stood in his sprawling office, gazing at the city skyline, his custom-tailored suit fitting perfectly over his broad shoulders. Behind him, Samantha Carter lounged on a velvet chaise, flipping through a catalogue of luxury estates on her tablet. "I think the Ashton Hills estate is ideal," Samantha said. 8 bedrooms, an infinity pool, and it's completely secluded. Perfect for our housewarming. Victor smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "Go ahead and book a viewing. We'll show them what success looks like." Samantha's face lit up with delight. "Oh, Ethan would die if he saw us there. He actually set up candles and roses for our anniversary dinner before I handed him the divorce papers. Can you believe it? He's so pathetic." Victor chuckled, but his amusement was cut short by a knock at the door. His CFO, Bernard Walsh, entered, his face unusually pale. "Victor," Bernard began, his voice low, "we have an issue." Victor turned, frowning. "What now?" "It's our institutional investors," Bernard said, stepping closer. "They're asking questions. Very pointed ones." "What kind of questions?" Victor asked sharply. "About revenue streams, subsidiary operations, and certain offshore accounts," Bernard explained. "Questions that indicate someone's been feeding them information, detailed, insider information." Samantha's smile faltered. "Who would do that?" "That's what we need to figure out," Bernard said, placing a folder on Victor's desk. "These documents were anonymously sent to several of our major shareholders." Victor snatched the folder and skimmed through its contents. His face grew redder with each page. "This is nonsense. These records were sealed. Nobody has access to this level of detail." "Apparently, someone does," Bernard said grimly. Victor slammed the folder shut. "Get the legal team on this. Find out who's behind it and shut them down." "Yes, sir," Bernard replied before leaving the office. As the door closed, Samantha leaned forward, her brows furrowed. "Victor, what does this mean for us?" Victor's jaw tightened. "It means we need to move quickly. We're pushing the IPO forward. Once we're public, none of this will matter. We'll have fresh capital, and any doubts about our finances will get drowned out by the market frenzy." Samantha hesitated. "Are you sure that's the right move? If these investors are already asking questions." "It's the only move," Victor snapped, cutting her off. "Trust me." Neither of them noticed the tiny red light blinking on Victor's desk phone, silently transmitting every word to a secure server. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that evening, Detective Hannah Diaz sat at her cluttered desk, her sharp eyes scanning a series of financial documents. For months, anonymous tips had been landing in her inbox, each pointing her toward potential irregularities in Greer Enterprises. Each tip was more detailed than the last, meticulously timed to coincide with other pieces of evidence. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, "Check offshore transfers dated March 15." Diaz frowned but quickly pulled up the relevant files. Her eyes widened as she connected the dots. A series of transactions flowed through multiple offshore accounts, creating a trail that could only suggest fraud. "Gotcha," she whispered to herself, jotting down notes. Unbeknownst to her, she was playing a carefully orchestrated role in Ethan Carter's elaborate game. Underscore 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 underscore. Back in Ethan's private office, multiple screens displayed a wealth of data: surveillance feeds from Victor's office, real-time financial records, and Detective Diaz's progress. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. "They're falling for it," Ethan remarked to Mark, who stood nearby. "Victor is pushing the IPO forward, just as we predicted." "And Samantha?" Mark asked, glancing at one of the screens showing her browsing luxury real estate. "She still thinks she's won," Ethan replied, his tone icy. "Let them celebrate while they can. The storm is gathering, and they won't see it until it's too late." Mark shook his head in amazement. "You've orchestrated this perfectly." "Revenge isn't just about striking back, Mark," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "It's about precision. Victor and Samantha need to feel every moment of their downfall. They need to know it's me." One screen showed Detective Diaz at her desk, poring over the documents Ethan had deliberately leaked to her. Another displayed Victor's mounting frustration as he reviewed investor emails filled with pointed questions about Greer Enterprises' finances. "They think they're untouchable," Ethan continued. "Their arrogance is their blind spot." Mark watched silently as Ethan's plan unfolded like a well-executed chess game. Each piece was moving exactly as intended, each player unknowingly advancing Ethan's agenda. Underscore 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 underscore. 2 days later, in Greer Enterprises' grand boardroom, Victor stood at the head of the table, presenting his accelerated IPO proposal to the board. His commanding presence and confident smile were enough to convince most of the members in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor began, gesturing to the slides on the screen, "this IPO isn't just an opportunity, it's a statement. Greer Enterprises is poised to dominate the global market. With fresh capital, we'll outpace every competitor and solidify our position at the top." The board members nodded in agreement, but Bernard Walsh, seated at the far end of the table, looked uneasy. Victor noticed and addressed him directly. "Bernard, do you have something to add?" Before Bernard could respond, the boardroom doors swung open. Mark Riley entered, followed by a team of lawyers carrying stacks of documents. The room fell silent. Victor's eyes narrowed. "This is a private meeting. Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Mark smiled coldly. "I represent the majority shareholder of Greer Enterprises." Victor's confidence faltered. "That's impossible. I'm the majority shareholder." "Not anymore," Mark replied, distributing documents to each board member. "Over the past 2 years, various shell corporations have systematically acquired controlling shares of Greer Enterprises. As of this morning, those shares are consolidated under one owner." Victor snatched one of the documents and scanned it, his face draining of color. "This can't be." The presentation screen flickered to life, revealing Ethan Carter's face. His expression was calm, his gaze piercing. "Hello, Victor," Ethan said smoothly. Victor stumbled backward, his composure unraveling. This is some kind of trick." "The only trick," Ethan replied, his voice laced with quiet triumph, "was making you believe you were in control." Victor's voice rose in desperation. "I built this company. And I bought it," Ethan countered, his tone steady. "Legally. Systematically. While you were busy betraying me, I was acquiring everything you thought was yours. The boardroom erupted in whispers as the lawyers confirmed the validity of the documents. Victor turned to the board, his voice shaking. You can't let him do this. I made you all rich. One of the senior board members spoke up, his tone firm. Mr. Greer, the documents also reveal significant irregularities in the company's financial records. These will need to be investigated thoroughly. Mark stepped forward. Along with certain offshore accounts that might interest federal authorities. Victor's face turned ashen. You're bluffing. Check your phone, Ethan said coolly. The FBI is already at your offices and residence. Victor's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. His hands shook as he read the messages. His empire was crumbling before his eyes. You've lost, Victor, Ethan said, his voice cold and final. The company, the wealth, the power, everything you built on lies and betrayal. Consider it the price of stealing from me. Victor's protests grew incoherent as security escorted him from the building. Ethan's image remained on the screen, his eyes unyielding. Enjoy the fall, Victor. As Victor disappeared, Ethan turned his focus back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a presentation prepared for the company's new direction. Shall we begin? The boardroom of Greer Enterprises was buzzing with unease as the dust settled from Ethan Carter's revelation. Lawyers quietly shuffled papers, board members whispered amongst themselves, and Mark Riley stood calmly by the door, observing the fallout. Victor Greer had been escorted out, his desperate protests echoing down the corridor like the cries of a fallen king. Ethan's face remained on the screen at the head of the room, his calm, composed demeanor commanding the room's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, Ethan began, his voice smooth yet resolute, Greer Enterprises will not be buried under the weight of Victor Greer's poor decisions. Instead, under my leadership, this company will rise as a beacon of ethical business practices and sustainable growth. One of the senior board members cleared his throat, his gray eyebrows furrowed. Mr. Carter, while the documents presented are compelling, these allegations of financial misconduct could lead to regulatory scrutiny. How do you intend to navigate that? Ethan leaned forward slightly, his presence emanating through the video call. Transparency will be our guiding principle. I've already engaged a team of forensic accountants to audit every corner of this organization. Any misconduct will be addressed swiftly and decisively. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Ethan continued, I understand your concerns, but rest assured, my intention is not just to preserve the company but to elevate it. Together, we can rebuild trust with our stakeholders and forge a new path forward. Mark stepped in, distributing a packet to each board member. Contained in these documents is a detailed plan for restructuring, alongside projections for the next 3 years under Mr. Carter's leadership. As the board members reviewed the material, Ethan's eyes flickered to a small screen off to the side. It displayed a live feed of Victor Greer pacing in the company lobby, his phone pressed to his ear. The feed was muted, but Ethan didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. Victor was scrambling, calling anyone who might save him, lawyers, contacts, even Samantha. But Ethan had made sure those avenues were already closed. Underscore 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 underscore. Downstairs, Victor's calls went unanswered, each voicemail message a fresh layer of humiliation. His last call was to Samantha, who was already dealing with her own unraveling world. Victor, Samantha hissed into her phone, her voice trembling, what is happening? My accounts are frozen. The house, our house, is under investigation. They're saying everything is tied up in legal battles. Victor clenched his jaw. I don't have time for your dramatics, Samantha. I need to fix this. Fix it? She snapped. You said you had it all under control. Now I'm getting calls from investigators asking about offshore accounts. This wasn't supposed to happen. Victor's voice dropped to a growl. This is just a setback. I'll get us out of this. Samantha scoffed, her voice laced with disdain. You couldn't even handle Ethan Carter, and now you expect me to believe you can take on the FBI? Victor started to respond, but the line went dead. Samantha had hung up. Underscore 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 underscore. In her modest apartment, Samantha sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the blank wall in disbelief. The phone in her hand felt like a lead weight. A notification buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was from her bank, account closure notice, pending investigation. Her once glamorous life was crumbling, piece by piece. The designer handbags and expensive shoes in her closet felt like cruel reminders of what she'd lost. The opulent lifestyle she had flaunted had been funded by stolen wealth, and now it was gone. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a bank notification. It was an email from her employer, a high-end retail store at the mall where she had taken a job to cover expenses. Meeting tomorrow with HR, attendance mandatory. Samantha swallowed hard, the reality of her situation settling in. This was not the life she had envisioned when she walked out on Ethan Carter. Underscore 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 underscore. Back in the boardroom, Ethan's presentation concluded to polite applause. The board was visibly unsettled, but they couldn't deny the clarity and promise of his vision. Mr. Carter, one board member said, adjusting his glasses, assuming your plans are implemented successfully, what will become of Victor Greer? Ethan's lips curled into a faint smile. Victor Greer will face the consequences of his actions, both personally and professionally. Rest assured, this is not about vengeance, it's about accountability. Mark suppressed a smirk. He knew better. Ethan's meticulous destruction of Victor's empire was as much about justice as it was about ensuring Victor never had the chance to rise again. Underscore 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 underscore. Meanwhile, in the office of Detective Hannah Diaz, the case against Victor Greer was taking shape. Files from anonymous sources painted a damning picture of financial fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. Each document seemed to arrive at the perfect moment, connecting dots that might have otherwise been overlooked. Diaz's phone buzzed. It was a text from the same unknown number that had been feeding her leads, check subsidiary transfers from April 10. She opened the files and immediately saw the discrepancies. Funds had been funneled through multiple layers of shell companies, creating a paper trail that screamed criminal activity. This isn't just fraud, Diaz muttered to herself. This is a blueprint for destruction. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Whoever was behind these tips wasn't just exposing Victor Greer, they were dismantling him piece by piece. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that evening, Ethan and Mark reconvened in Ethan's penthouse office. Surveillance feeds showed Victor sitting in his luxury car, parked outside his now inaccessible mansion. Samantha's tracker placed her at a nearby motel, her first night away from the lap of luxury. "They're unraveling," Mark said, handing Ethan a report. "Victor's lawyers are jumping ship, and Samantha is down to her last credit card." "Good," Ethan replied, his tone devoid of emotion. "They're exactly where I want them to be." Mark hesitated. "And what about the next phase?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "Victor will attempt to fight back. He'll make mistakes, big ones. When he does, we'll be ready." Underscore 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 underscore. Victor Greer's final card was a desperate move to sell whatever remained of his assets. But as he worked through the night, he failed to notice the carefully placed breadcrumbs leading him into an even deeper trap. Every move he made was anticipated, every strategy countered. By morning, Victor received a call from his last remaining ally, Bernard Walsh. "Victor," Bernard said grimly, "we've been subpoenaed. The SEC is investigating, and they've frozen all company accounts." Victor's breath caught in his throat. "All of them?" "Yes," Bernard replied. "It's over, Victor." The call ended, leaving Victor alone in his office. His empire had collapsed, his wealth had vanished, and his reputation was in ruins. The crushing weight of Ethan Carter's revenge settled heavily on his shoulders. Underscore 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 underscore. At the same time, Samantha's mandatory meeting with HR resulted in her termination. Without warning, her world shrank even further. Her options were dwindling, and the reality of her choices became clearer with every passing hour. Back in his penthouse, Ethan watched the surveillance feeds one last time before turning off the screens. The storm he had orchestrated had finally broken. His enemies were scattered, their power obliterated, and their lives reduced to ruins. Still waters ran deep, and Ethan's were far from calm. Victor Greer's Manhattan mansion buzzed with activity, but not the glamorous kind he was accustomed to. Security teams changed locks, forensic accountants packed files into boxes, and court officers catalogued assets for impending legal proceedings. The grand estate, once a symbol of his power, had become a crime scene of sorts. Samantha Carter stood in the grand foyer, her designer bag clutched tightly in her manicured hands. Her once impeccable appearance had begun to fray, a visible sign of the chaos consuming her life. Her voice, however, retained its sharp edge. "You can't do this," she exclaimed, her tone a mix of disbelief and anger. "This is my home." A man in a tailored suit, the head of the security team, glanced at his tablet. "Actually, ma'am, according to property records, this house belongs to Greer Enterprises, now controlled by Carter Holdings. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings." Samantha's phone buzzed in her hand. A quick glance at the notification made her blood run cold, all accounts frozen pending investigation. She felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. Her growing distress caught the attention of a middle-aged lawyer standing nearby. He stepped forward with a polite yet firm demeanor. "Mrs. Carter, I represent Mr. Ethan Carter in your divorce proceedings. Given recent developments, he is contesting the financial terms of your settlement. All assets have been frozen pending court review." Samantha's eyes widened. "He can't do that. Those funds are mine. I earned them." "By draining joint accounts without disclosure," the lawyer interjected, raising an eyebrow. "The courts may see it differently. Also, given Mr. Greer's current legal predicament, any funds transferred to you from him are under scrutiny as potential proceeds of fraud." Samantha stumbled back, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor as she processed the implications. "I need to call my lawyer." "Your lawyer's firm has withdrawn representation," the man added. "Conflict of interest, I believe. Underscore 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 underscore. Meanwhile, across the city, Victor sat in his parked luxury car, frantically scrolling through his phone. His once pristine suit was rumpled, his normally slicked-back hair disheveled. Call after call to his legal team went unanswered, and the last voicemail he left for his CFO, Bernard Walsh, remained unreturned. Victor's phone buzzed with a message from Samantha. "They're taking everything. What's the plan?" Victor's hands tightened around the steering wheel. He had no plan. For the first time in years, the man who always prided himself on control had none. His accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and the SEC was breathing down his neck. The phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from the Uber app. His first ride request had arrived. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his jaw tightening before he reluctantly swiped to accept. Underscore 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 underscore. In Ethan Carter's penthouse office, he and Mark Riley reviewed reports detailing the fallout. Mark set a tablet on the desk, showing live updates from the mansion and Victor's dwindling bank accounts. "Victor just completed his first Uber ride," Mark said, unable to hide a smirk. "A 3-star rating. Apparently, he was rude to the passenger." Ethan didn't respond immediately, his storm-gray eyes fixed on the reports. "And Samantha?" Mark swiped to a new screen, showing security footage from the mansion. Samantha could be seen arguing with the head of security as she struggled to pack a few belongings into a bag. Her accounts are locked. Her credit cards have been cancelled. She's got whatever cash is in her purse and the clothes on her back. Ethan nodded, his expression impassive. "And the job offer?" "She'll start Monday at a mall retail store," Mark replied. "Minimum wage." "Perfect." Ethan leaned back in his chair, the faintest trace of satisfaction on his face. "Let them feel what it's like to struggle. To be powerless." Mark studied Ethan for a moment before speaking. "This isn't just about taking their money, is it? You're making them live the life they used to mock." Ethan's voice was steady, almost cold. "They mocked me. Called my life pathetic while they plotted to destroy it. This isn't about revenge anymore, it's about justice. They need to understand the weight of their choices." Underscore 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 underscore. Back at the mansion, Samantha was escorted to the curb with her hastily packed bags. The grandeur of her former life now seemed like a distant memory. She glanced around, hoping for a friendly face, but the security team's cold professionalism offered no solace. She pulled out her phone, dialing her sister. "Sophie, please, I just need a place to stay." "Just for a few days," Samantha pleaded. The response was curt. "I can't help you, Samantha. I'm not getting involved." The line went dead, leaving Samantha alone on the sidewalk. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, Detective Hannah Diaz sifted through another set of files related to Greer Enterprises. Each document, each anonymous tip, painted an increasingly damning picture of systemic fraud. Offshore accounts, shell companies, falsified records. Victor's empire was a house of cards built on lies. Diaz's phone buzzed with a message: "Check the Cayman transfers dated April 20th. She followed the lead, her eyes narrowing as she uncovered yet another trail of suspicious activity. Whoever was feeding her this information wasn't just exposing corruption, they were orchestrating a takedown with surgical precision. "Who are you?" she muttered, her curiosity growing alongside her determination. Underscore 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 underscore. In the days that followed, both Victor and Samantha felt the full weight of Ethan's plan. Victor's attempts to secure new legal representation failed as word of his impending indictment spread. His Uber ratings plummeted, with passengers complaining about his attitude and lack of professionalism. His world, once defined by power and wealth, was now reduced to navigating city traffic for meager tips. Samantha's new job at the mall was equally humbling. Her co-workers, most of whom were much younger, didn't hide their disdain for her entitled attitude. Customers berated her for minor mistakes, and her manager reprimanded her for failing to meet sales quotas. The glamorous life she had once flaunted was now a memory she could barely afford to cling to. Back in Ethan's office, Mark handed him another report. "Victor's parole officer has approved his Uber job. It's the only work he can get with his record." "And Samantha?" Ethan asked, glancing at a screen showing footage of her struggling to fold clothes at the retail store. "She's adapting," Mark said, smirking. "Barely." Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the screen for a moment before he turned away. Let them live in the world they created. Let them experience the reality they once dismissed. Mark nodded. "And what about the next phase?" Ethan's voice was calm but resolute. "We've taken their power. Now we make sure they can never reclaim it." As the days turned into weeks, Victor and Samantha's lives continued to spiral. Each passing moment deepened the chasm between their past and present. Their pride had been their downfall, and Ethan's meticulously crafted justice ensured they felt every moment of their descent. Still waters ran deep, and Ethan's waters had never been still. The mansion that once symbolized Victor Greer and Samantha Carter's unbridled wealth now hummed with a different kind of energy. The grand halls were no longer adorned with ostentatious displays of luxury but had been transformed into a shelter for women and children escaping difficult circumstances. Gone were the lavish parties; in their place, quiet conversations and laughter filled the air. Clara Monroe, the shelter's director, moved with purpose through the newly repurposed rooms. Each space was designed for functionality and comfort: dormitories for single mothers, childcare facilities, communal dining areas, and classrooms for vocational training. Clara exuded a sense of calm authority, her presence a reassuring anchor for the residents. "We need to make sure the security system is top-notch," Clara instructed a contractor. "Many of our residents are escaping abusive situations. They need to feel safe here." A young woman entered the room hesitantly, holding the hand of a little girl who clung to her side. "Ms. Monroe?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Tess Bellamy. The agency referred me." Clara's expression softened, her warm smile putting the nervous woman at ease. "Welcome, Tess. And who is this?" "This is Emma," Tess replied, her daughter peeking out from behind her legs. "Well, Emma," Clara said, crouching to meet the child's gaze, "we're so glad you're here. Would you like to see the playroom? It has toys and books." Emma nodded shyly, and Clara led the small family toward their new living space. "Your unit has its own kitchenette and bathroom," she explained. "We also provide childcare during the day so you can work or take classes. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask." Tessa's eyes widened as she took in the facility. "This place is incredible. It must have cost a fortune to set up." Clara's smile deepened. "The owner believes in giving people a second chance. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and everyone deserves support while they rebuild." In his private office, Ethan Carter watched the interaction on a security feed, his sharp eyes softened by the scene. Clara had been instrumental in turning his plan for the mansion into a reality. Her compassion and leadership transformed a symbol of greed and betrayal into a sanctuary of hope. Mark Riley entered the office, holding a report. "The shelter is operating at full capacity," he said. "We've got a waitlist for the vocational training program." "Good," Ethan replied, his voice calm but firm. "And Victor?" "His first month as an Uber driver was interesting," Mark said, unable to suppress a smirk. "More one-star reviews than 5 stars. Apparently, he doesn't take criticism well." "And Samantha?" "She's settling into her retail job. Had a meltdown when a customer yelled at her about a return policy. Security had to intervene." Ethan's lips curled into a faint smile. "Perfect." Mark hesitated before speaking again. "Clara doesn't know the full extent of your involvement, does she?" "No," Ethan said simply. "And she doesn't need to. This is her vision, her work. I just provided the resources." Mark nodded but couldn't help but admire Ethan's ability to orchestrate everything from the shadows. From Victor and Samantha's downfall to the shelter's rise, every detail had been planned with precision. That afternoon, Detective Hannah Diaz arrived at the shelter, her sharp eyes taking in the warm, welcoming environment. Clara greeted her with a smile, leading her on a tour of the facilities. "This place is amazing," Diaz said, her admiration genuine. "It's rare to see a project of this scale succeed so quickly." "It's been a labor of love," Clara replied. "The owner's generosity made it possible." Diaz raised an eyebrow. "The owner, huh? Whoever they are, they've got a knack for timing." Clara's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I suppose some people believe in justice taking different forms." Diaz studied Clara for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. Over the past months, she had pieced together fragments of the puzzle surrounding Greer Enterprises' collapse. The anonymous tips, the perfectly timed leaks, the transformation of Victor and Samantha's lives, it all pointed to a mastermind operating in the shadows. But Diaz said nothing, merely nodding as Clara continued the tour. In her line of work, she had learned that justice wasn't always about following the law. Sometimes, it was about balance. Underscore 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 underscore. In the mansion's playroom, Emma giggled as she built a tower of blocks with other children. Tess watched from the doorway, tears welling in her eyes. It was the first time in months that her daughter had laughed. Clara approached, placing a comforting hand on Tess's shoulder. "She's safe here," Clara said softly. "You both are." Tess nodded, her voice breaking. "I can't thank you enough. I didn't think we'd ever find a place like this." Clara's smile was kind. "This is what we're here for." That evening, in his office, Ethan reviewed plans for the shelter's expansion. 3 additional locations had been identified, each in areas with high needs. The foundation's funding structure ensured the projects would remain viable for years to come. Mark entered with an update. Victor's Uber application has been flagged for unprofessional behavior. And Samantha's retail manager says she's showing signs of improvement, barely. "They'll adapt," Ethan said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "They have no choice." Mark hesitated, then asked, "Do you think they've learned their lesson?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "They're living the consequences of their choices. That's the only lesson they need." Mark nodded, understanding that Ethan's sense of justice was unyielding. There was no forgiveness in his plan, only accountability. Back at the shelter, Clara finished her day by organizing an orientation session for new residents. Her natural empathy drew out even the most hesitant participants, her warmth creating a space where healing could begin. Ethan watched her through the security feed, his expression softening. Clara was everything Samantha wasn't: genuine, compassionate, and focused on others. She had taken the ashes of his betrayal and built something beautiful. Mark placed a final stack of reports on Ethan's desk. "The foundation paperwork is ready. Once you sign, the shelter becomes a permanent institution with guaranteed funding." Ethan nodded. "Make it happen. These women deserve more than temporary sanctuary. They deserve a real chance to rebuild." As Mark left the office, Ethan turned his attention back to the feed. Clara was sitting with a new resident, listening intently as the woman shared her story. Her patience and kindness reminded Ethan why he had chosen this path. Sometimes, destruction wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something better. The office was quiet, the hum of the overhead lights the only sound filling the room. Clara Monroe sat at her desk, reviewing donation records for the shelter. It had been a few months since the shelter had opened its doors, and the transformation of the mansion from an opulent monument of greed to a haven for women and children had been nothing short of miraculous. The work was hard, but Clara had found purpose and peace in what she was doing. As she sifted through the files, one name caught her eye. She clicked through several documents, the connections gradually revealing themselves. Property records, funding sources, the timing of the mansion's acquisition, it all led back to a singular conclusion. She leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had long suspected there was more to the story of the mansion's donation than she had been told. The pieces were all coming together, and now it was time to confront the man who had made all of this possible, Ethan Carter. Clara stood, gathering the files and heading toward his office. Mark Riley, always vigilant, glanced up as she entered. His face was unreadable, but Clara could see the tension in his posture. "Everything okay?" Mark asked, his voice tight. Clara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed the documents on Ethan's desk, each page a careful map leading to a truth she had begun to piece together. The property transfer records. The funding structure. The shell companies. All of it pointed to one undeniable fact. Ethan, Clara began, her voice steady but firm, I need to know the truth. Ethan, who had been silently reviewing the shelter's progress on his computer, turned his gaze to Clara. He could see the seriousness in her eyes and the stack of documents in front of him. He didn't flinch, nor did he attempt to hide the truth. He had known this moment would come, and now, it was here. Go ahead, Ethan said quietly, his tone measured. Ask me what you need to. Clara stood her ground, her mind already assembling the pieces she had uncovered. The mansion, she said slowly. Victor Greer and Samantha Carter, they weren't the true owners, were they? Ethan didn't answer right away, allowing Clara to finish. These documents, they show a different picture. You were the one who orchestrated everything. From the property acquisition to the shell companies, the funding sources. You took control long before I knew what was happening. A flash of recognition crossed Ethan's eyes. You've been investigating. I had to, Clara said, her voice filled with a mix of frustration and disbelief. The timing was too perfect. The shelter's creation, the takeover of Greer Enterprises, the way their lives were completely destroyed, all of it pointed to you. You had everything planned out, didn't you? Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. He had never intended to hide the truth from Clara, he simply hadn't known when the right time would be to share it. I did, Ethan replied, his voice calm but resolute. Victor and Samantha betrayed me. They stole from me, from my family, from everything I had worked for. When I found out about the affair, I knew I had to act. But this shelter, this place of healing, it wasn't just revenge. It was an opportunity to create something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Clara's eyes softened slightly as she processed his words. She had known that Ethan's revenge was calculated, but she hadn't fully understood the extent to which he had orchestrated every move. She had trusted him, admired him for the work he had done with the shelter, but this? This was something entirely different. And this is your justice? Clara asked, her voice low. You didn't just take from them, you made sure they'd never recover. You took everything they valued. Power. Status. Wealth. You dismantled their lives and left them with nothing. Ethan nodded. I had to. They thought they were untouchable. But they weren't. And now they understand the price of betrayal. Clara's face hardened, her thoughts swirling. She had always believed in the concept of justice, but this was something else entirely. What Ethan had done was beyond the ordinary bounds of revenge, it was complete and total destruction. But it had also created something remarkable. The shelter was thriving, and it was providing a future for women who needed it. So, this wasn't just about punishing them, Clara said softly, her gaze meeting Ethan's. This was about building something they could never touch. Ethan didn't flinch. Yes, he replied simply. They had their chance. They chose their path, and now they live with the consequences. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, trying to absorb everything she had just learned. She had always known that Ethan's mind was sharp and calculating, but the depth of his strategy was something she hadn't anticipated. And the shelter? Clara asked, finally finding her voice again. Is this part of your plan too? To take their wealth and turn it into something meaningful? It wasn't just about their wealth, Ethan said quietly. It was about restoring balance. I built something better, not just for me, but for people who truly need it. This place, he gestured toward the shelter, is proof that something good can come from destruction. I'm not ashamed of what I did. Clara stood in silence, her emotions churning. She understood now, Ethan wasn't just seeking vengeance for the betrayal he had suffered. He had crafted an elaborate plan that had not only ruined Victor and Samantha but had given new life to so many others in the process. The shelter, the lives it was saving, the opportunities it was providing, they were all a testament to his meticulous vision. "You've thought of everything," Clara said finally, her voice heavy with realization. "You didn't just destroy their world. You rebuilt yours, and more. You're not just making them pay. You're creating something that will last far longer than their downfall." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "That's the point, Clara. True justice isn't just about retribution, it's about transformation. Their fall is painful, yes, but from it, something new, something better, has emerged. And that's why I did it." Clara's heart ached as she processed the enormity of what Ethan had done. She had always believed in justice, but what Ethan had created went beyond the boundaries of the law. It was a different kind of justice, one that rebuilt, that transformed lives, and that provided opportunities for redemption where none seemed possible. But even in the face of that, Clara knew one thing for certain: the past would never be fully buried. Some debts could never be repaid. Some trust could never be rebuilt. As she walked out of Ethan's office, Clara's thoughts were clouded. She had learned the truth, and now she had to decide what it meant for her, for the shelter, and for the future. The shelter's main hall hummed with activity as residents moved through their daily routines. New families were arriving, and there was a quiet buzz of conversation as women shared stories of hope and struggle, children played under the supervision of staff, and a sense of community began to take root. The transformation of the once proud Greer mansion into a place of healing and refuge was now a reality, one that was alive with promise. Clara Monroe stood at the front of the room, organizing the afternoon support group meeting. The program had become a staple of the shelter's operations, offering a space for the women to share their experiences, offer each other support, and find strength in their shared journeys. Clara had grown close to many of the residents, and seeing their progress made every challenge worth it. Today, she would be introducing a new phase of the shelter's programs, job training and educational resources to help the women rebuild their lives. It was part of Ethan's vision to offer more than just shelter. It was about providing the tools to succeed in the world beyond the walls of the mansion. As she made her way to the meeting room, Clara's phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment but answered. "Clara Monroe," she said, her voice steady. "Clara," the voice on the other end was soft, almost hesitant. "It's Samantha." Clara's pulse quickened. She hadn't heard from Samantha in months, and she hadn't expected to. The last time they'd spoken, it had been clear that Samantha was completely unraveling. Her life had been destroyed by the chain of events that Ethan had set in motion. "What do you want, Samantha?" Clara asked, her voice guarded. I just need to talk," Samantha said, her voice breaking slightly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't even know what I'm asking for. I need to understand. Can I come see you? Please." Clara took a deep breath. It was hard not to feel anger when she thought about all the pain Samantha had caused, both to Ethan and to herself. But there was something in Samantha's voice that made her hesitate. Was it remorse? Or simply another attempt at redemption? She wasn't sure, but she felt it was worth hearing her out. "Fine. You can come," Clara said reluctantly. "But only if you're ready to face what you've done." Underscore 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 underscore. An hour later, Samantha arrived at the shelter. Her appearance had changed since Clara had last seen her. Her once polished look was gone. She wore a simple, faded coat, and her eyes carried the weight of exhaustion and regret. She stood at the entrance, hesitant, unsure of how to proceed. Clara watched from the security monitors. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew that this moment would mark a turning point. Samantha had lost everything, her wealth, her social status, her relationship with Victor, and now, she was standing at the gates of the shelter, a place of refuge she had once mocked. Clara approached the front door and opened it. Samantha was waiting, her hands nervously clasped together. "Samantha," Clara said, her voice steady. "Come in." Samantha nodded, walking in quietly. She looked around the building, her gaze lingering on the communal areas, the walls filled with art created by the women who had passed through the shelter. There was a sense of life here, a sense of healing, that Samantha had never imagined. "Thank you for seeing me," Samantha said, her voice small. Clara motioned for her to sit at one of the tables. "What do you want, Samantha? Why are you here?" Samantha took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "I've lost everything, Clara. Everything. And I know I don't deserve your sympathy, or Ethan's. But I wanted to see this place, to see what it's become. To see what you've built, and maybe, to understand how to fix the mess I made." Clara studied her for a moment, trying to gauge her sincerity. "You've already made the mess, Samantha. What's left now is facing it. You've been given a second chance, but you have to want it. You can't just waltz in here and ask for forgiveness. That's not how this works." Samantha nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know that. I've spent months trying to pick up the pieces, trying to understand where I went wrong. I thought I could control everything. But now I see how wrong I was. How blind I was." Clara's gaze softened slightly. "You were never in control, Samantha. Control is an illusion. You thought money and power could protect you, but it only isolated you. Now, you're here, and you have to learn what real strength looks like. And it's not in wealth, or status. It's in humility and accountability." Samantha was quiet for a long moment, her hands trembling. "I've lost everything," she repeated. "Victor, the house, the money. No one will talk to me. My reputation is gone." "You built your reputation on lies," Clara said bluntly. "And now you have to rebuild it. From the ground up. This shelter is full of women who have lost more than you. They've lost their dignity, their homes, their families. But they're here, and they're fighting to rebuild. You have to fight too, if you want a chance at redemption." Samantha looked at Clara, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and resolve. "What do I do now?" Clara took a deep breath. "You start by doing what the women here do. You work. You earn back some dignity. You put in the effort, every single day. And maybe, someday, you'll learn what real strength looks like." Samantha swallowed hard, but a flicker of determination passed through her eyes. "I'm ready. Whatever it takes." Clara nodded. "Good. We'll find something for you to do here. You'll start small. It won't be easy, but that's the point. It's time to learn what it means to fight for something that matters." A few weeks passed, and Samantha began her new life at the shelter. She worked alongside the residents, helping with administrative tasks, organizing donations, and assisting with the new job training program. Slowly, but surely, she began to understand the weight of her actions and the toll they had taken, not just on her life, but on the lives of those she had hurt. Ethan, ever the silent observer, kept his distance, but Clara knew that his eyes were always watching. Samantha's transformation wasn't about forgiveness, it was about accountability and rebuilding, just as the shelter had done for so many others. And while Samantha could never undo the damage she had caused, she was beginning to understand that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning from it, accepting the consequences, and working towards something better. As for Victor, he had been released from prison and was still struggling to find a way to make ends meet. His attempts to reclaim any shred of his former life had failed, and he, too, was slowly learning that some things could never be reclaimed. Ethan's plan had come to fruition. Victor and Samantha had been stripped of everything they once valued, but in their place, new lives had been built, and new opportunities had been created. The past, for them, was not something that could be forgiven or forgotten, but something that had to be lived with every single day. The phoenix had risen from the ashes of betrayal, not through forgiveness, but through transformation. And as Ethan and Clara stood together, watching the shelter thrive, they knew that their true victory was not in destroying their enemies, but in building something they could never touch.